on my iPad. This is the joys of technology, right?
I know, but all the more rewarding when it works.
There we go. So I can actually see you now, and so that's pretty awesome. So I just want to say to everybody, we've got Gilan Gork with us, and we're going to get into this conversation with Gilan. There's a couple of very interesting things that we're going to chat about. I want to ask him a couple of questions around what he's doing, etc. But before we do that, I thought we should just talk a little bit about the launch of the Suits and Sneakers membership program that Mark Sham has put in place for Suits and Sneakers. And we were both there last night. So how did you find the event, Gilan?
It was really wonderful, I must say, on so many different ways. The food at Levi and Rose, thank you to Wolfie, to Yankee, Wolf, not Wolfie, to Yankee and Ronnie. I mean, that was just absolutely, I mean, they really hit the nail on the head, especially that deep fried Toblerone at the end was just the best thing. But that was great. And just, I would say the highlight for me was just being around so many like-minded people. And, you know, Mark, with his vision for Suits and Sneakers and changing education in this country, has just pulled and has attracted such good quality people who have really gathered behind this cause. And we had so many different conversations last night with different people coming and going at the tables, lots of great networking with just really bright, talented, passionate people. I really, really love that about the Suits and Sneakers community.
Yeah, absolutely. I must tell you, I really enjoyed the movement of the tables between the different courses, you know, because we also had some really, really fascinating discussions with everybody that we sat at tables with, which is really great. So well done to Mark. What we're going to do is we're going to have Mark on Suits and Sneakers TV next week, and we will explore this topic of the Suits and Sneakers membership with him extensively. But today it's about you, Gilan. So for those that don't know you, perhaps you can just give a little bit of background as to, you know, who you are and what it is that you do.
Well, I'm a mentalist, and that's actually quite a broad term. A lot of people know the term mentalist from the TV show. A lot of people watched it because of Simon Baker, Patrick Jane. You know, I always like to ask my audiences whether if they're fans of The Mentalist, whether they watch it because they actually think mentalism is cool or because of Simon Baker. Often the answer is Simon Baker. So, you know, a lot of the time that's people's only reference. But a mentalist is really anyone who does stuff with the mind. And it's actually quite a broad term. You know, some people who are really good with maths, they could call themselves a mentalist. You know, it's amazing they do all these really fast calculations, or people who are great with memory. For me, as a mentalist, my speciality is in reading and influencing people. So I specialize in things like body language, nonverbal communication, the psychology of influence and persuasion. And what I do from day to day really is working closely with companies who hire me to come in and help their people to become the most influential versions of themselves, whether that is in leadership capacities or if they're into sales, negotiation, marketing, and so on.
So am I right in saying that what could happen is people could invite you to come and do some entertainment for their event? Or they can invite you to come across and do some serious education around the topic of influence. That's about it, right?
Yes, I mean, there's two completely different sides. So a lot of people will be familiar with the stuff that I've done, which is more on the entertaining side. A lot of people remember on Carte Blanche where I drove an Aston Martin blindfolded around Swartkorps racetrack. It was littered with obstacles. I had Derek Watts next to me. You know, it was quite a nerve-wracking experience. And so a lot of people know that side of what I do as a mentalist. They've seen my live shows where what I do seems like psychic or supernatural abilities. But the way that I really think is the best way to describe it is that I use my 5 senses to create the experience of a 6th sense. You know, there's no real psychic or supernatural abilities. There's actually quite an academic side to it. But yes, I get asked to come in and either present what I call my mentalist experience, which is like an interactive show where I'll read what people are thinking, predict what they're going to do or say in advance before they even know they're going to do it. So that's the fun side. And then I had people come up to me and say, well, how do we apply this to business? And this was the birth of the corporate work, which has now just completely exploded globally, and especially when my book was released in 2015. Persuasion games is just that teaching side has just it's just growing exponentially. And I'm really enjoying that space, being able to actually add value to people where they can use practical skills and influence.
So I must tell you, there seems to be a bit of feedback there, but that's great. So the first time that I actually saw you was from the business side of this, and so I think if I think for our audience especially, the discussion that we should have is around this whole topic of influence. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about where you are in your head at the moment around the topic of influence, because I know you've been doing this for a while, and but sometimes what can happen is when we do stuff for a while, we kind of it becomes like you sort of get blasé about it, but I know you're not. And so talk to me a little bit about where you are in your head regarding influence and why you think in 2017 this is such an important topic.
Well, like you mentioned, influence is my thing. I'm completely passionate about it. So let me answer your question in two parts. The first is, when I say the term influence or persuasion, a lot of people ask me the morals behind it. They say, well, isn't that negative? And you're manipulating people. And I suppose when you hear the word manipulation, you immediately imagine something that's questionable, But I like to ask people, imagine you saw a mother manipulating her child to look both ways before crossing the road safely. If you saw that, you wouldn't think twice about it, because her intention is to keep her child safe, right? So I like to use the analogy of a surgeon's knife. A scalpel. It can be used for great good or for great evil. It really depends on the person using that tool. And so let me just say that when we discuss influence and persuasion, I'll tell you in a moment why I'm so passionate about it. We're talking about using these skills to create mutually beneficial outcomes, win-win situations, which the greatest leaders in history have been able to use. In positive ways. So if you're creating an outcome, if you're influencing someone and the outcome of that will be good for both of you, that's positive. If one person is going to be the winner and one's going to be the loser, then that's negative influence or negative manipulation. And of course, I don't advocate that. And so with that in mind, that it's all about positive influence, I'm absolutely passionate about influence, because if you consider any area of your life, whether it's personal or professional, whether it's as a parent, as someone who's part of a sports team, if it's in your business, whether you're, leading that business, if you're the CEO or the founder, or if you have a position somewhere in the company, our effectiveness is directly proportional to our ability to positively influence the people around us. Because to be successful, we can't be the Lone Ranger. We rely on other people to lift us up to success, whether they're our clients, whether it's our boss, whether it's our team members. We need each other. And the gap between where we are now and our goals, that gap, the bridge that crosses over that, is made of other people who help us to get there. So I'm really passionate about that. I really think that, my belief is that life is all about empowering ourselves to be able to achieve what we want to achieve. And when we empower ourselves with the ability to understand and influence people, we're able to achieve anything that we want. And that's why I'm so passionate about it.
Okay, so that's description of where you are in your head about this topic of influence. So I just want to say to everybody that's watching along with us, if I do look to my right here, I'm actually just looking at the iPad screen. You are more than welcome to ask Gilan any questions. In fact, if you have seen him live before, either at a Suit and Sneakers event or elsewhere, please do comment. So that's very important. Naleda says, Gilan, what's your take on the importance of mentors? So let's go there for a second.
Well, the importance of mentors is immense. I think that firstly, let's differentiate between a mentor and a coach. In my opinion, a mentor is someone who has walked the path that you want to walk and can help you with lessons along that path. And a coach is someone perhaps who knows how to help you discover your own answers through asking the right questions and so on. And so I think that no matter which, and sometimes people are a combination of both, by the way, but I think that no matter whether you're looking at a mentor or a coach, the amount of influence that someone like that can have on you, besides the obvious of actually teaching you things along the way, that the mistakes that they've learned, so you can bypass a lot of trial and error. There's a huge amount of influence in being accountable to someone. You know, if you invest in a mentor or a coach as well, it's worth the money, because the more money you pay, the more accountable you are as well. So I really think that for many reasons, other just the basic ones, it's a really wise idea to get a mentor. Peter, are you there? It froze for a sec, but now I can see you. Yeah.
Just froze for a sec. No problem.
So did I come through there? Did my answer complete?
I think you should just repeat that last piece that you were talking about. Maybe we should pick up on when you were talking about the mentor and coach could actually be the same person.
Yeah, so sometimes a mentor and a coach is the same person. But what I was saying is that some of the power of influence of having someone like a mentor or a coach is that there's a huge amount of accountability, especially when you're paying them money, which I do suggest if you can, because then you're accountable to yourself as well. But of course, there are lots of people who will mentor or coach you, even if you're not paying them. And of course, if you understand how to influence people around you and you're able to influence someone, to take you on and for them to be your mentor or coach, then that is really beneficial. But to be accountable to a mentor, to have someone who is helping you in the right way, and someone who can make you self-aware, because there's also self-persuasion and self-influence, and they can help you with that as well. So it's a good idea. Definitely, I encourage it.
Right. So now, though, I hope that answered your question. And for everybody else who's joining us here, welcome. I know that the vast majority of you are probably going to watch this in the replay, but as we said a little earlier, you know, if you have questions for Gilan or questions around the topic that we're discussing or comments that you want to make, please do so. And even if you're watching this in the replay, you know, you're more than welcome to actually leave your comments there, because we will monitor this as we go. So sure. Something I quickly wanted to ask you, when you did a presentation at the Suit and Sneakers real life MBA event, right?
Yeah, that was a great event.
What was the topic you discussed there?
That was all about the 6 universal principles of influence, and really how to apply it apply them in every area of your company, of your business. We had quite a mixed audience there. And so that really was about how to use influence in anything from negotiation to sales to marketing to leadership. But it was all about the 6 principles.
Okay, great. So I want to ask you about those 6 principles. These are also discussed in your book, right?
The book Persuasion Games does make mention of some of the 6 principles, but really it's quite a broad view at a whole lot of influence psychology. And coming, with the perspectives of a mentalist, I draw a lot of parallels between people who are, I say, so-called psychics, who seem to know a lot about people, and the kind of psychology that they use that makes you feel that they can know so much about you. I draw parallels between that psychology and the psychology of influence. So to really just make it fun and to make, for people to really see how the mind is actually quite predictable, and how we're able to influence and persuade the mind quite easily when you know all the different ways that it works. So it's not just about the 6 principles. There's a whole lot more to the book, and it's quite a fun read as well, so interactive stuff in it.
So what I'm going to do is drop a link to Gilan's book in the comments when we're done, so that, if you haven't read this, you can pop over and get yourself a copy of that. That'll be great. So I wanted to ask you, and this is probably quite a difficult question to answer, because I know that in your thinking, these 6 principles are all your favorites. If you had to identify a favorite, you'll probably say you couldn't because of all 6. But because of time constraints, you think from a business perspective, Which of the 6 principles do you think it would be really worthwhile for an individual to master when it comes to the skill of influencing others?
There's no one principle that will apply to absolutely every scenario. Some scenarios and interactions that we have, you could apply even more than one principle, and some of them dovetail together. But if I had to choose one principle that I think would be the most widely applicable, I would say that authority would be one of them. And this really is an amazing principle, but a lot of people don't know how to use it. Let me first say that the principle of authority is that people like to be influenced by, or they like to follow the lead of, knowledgeable, credible authorities or experts. And the mistake that a lot of people make is that they don't demonstrate, either directly or indirectly, what makes them a knowledgeable, credible expert before they make their influence attempt. And that's the whole thing about influence, is that often most of the influence techniques are done before you actually make your influence attempt. Sounds like a chef in the kitchen. And you've got to preheat that oven, before you go and put all your ingredients in, otherwise the cake isn't going to rise. And so authority is one of these principles, which I'll explain in a little bit more detail now, that you would want to do just beforehand. Here's the thing with authority. When we're children, when we grow up, we have a lot of authority figures in our lives. We have our parents, our teachers, there's policemen and policewomen. I mean, that's not an exhaustive list, but you can tell that there's tons of different types of authorities. Our teachers at school. And we learn at a very young age that these authorities keep us safe and that they control things like rewards and punishment. And so we get conditioned in this way. And as adults, we tend not to go back and revisit that concept or that feeling of authority. So what happens is that people land up being influenced and complying more with people who look, sound, act like an authority. It's absolutely amazing. You look at, for example, an advert on TV, and let's say it's for a toothpaste, for example, and there's an actor who's got a white lab coat on. He's got a stethoscope loitering around his neck. You know that he's an actor. In fact, the words don't even match his mouth because it's dubbed in so many different languages. I mean, it's like one of those ads. And yet just the fact that there's that clinical look, he's got the stethoscope, but all of that, immediately we're more influenced because he seems like an authority, even though we know that he was cast by an agency because he looks the part. And so a lot of research has been done on this. Physiotherapists who hang their qualifications in frames on their walls, their patients are more likely to do their rehab exercises. Or overseas in the States where they do not have things like parking guards, whereas here we do. Overseas, if someone who was wearing what looked like a uniform would walk up to someone who just parked their car and would ask for money, they were far more likely to receive that money if they were wearing something that looked like a uniform as opposed to just regular civilian clothing. And so what we find is that if you indicate to someone what makes you an authority, they're far more likely to comply. Let me give you one case study that I think people will find very interesting. A real estate company in the States trained their receptionists to make an expert introduction before diverting calls. So for example, someone would call and they would say, "Oh, are you looking to buy a house here in Sandton? Well, let me put you through to Peter. Peter is our head of sales. He's been with the company for 15 years. He'll definitely be able to help you." And they'll put the call through. Or, "Oh, are you looking to rent in Greenside, right near Impello? Oh, okay. Let me put you through to Mark. Mark is our head of rentals, and he specializes in that area. He'll be able to help you." So there was just a simple expert introduction. Didn't cost them anything to do that. But just by having that introduction, they found that they had a 20% rise in the number of appointments and a 15% increase in signed contracts.
Wow.
Have testimonials on your websites. You can have, if you have an office, put things in your office that will indirectly communicate that you're an expert. There's so many different ways that you can directly or indirectly communicate that you're an expert. Reviews online. The new authority are online users. So anyways, there's so many more. If we had more time, I could give a lot more examples, but that's the principle of authority, and it's extremely powerful and often overlooked.
And I do want to get back to that in a second with another question I want to ask you. But Daryl asks an interesting question here. He says, could you share with us who are the influences in your life?
Wow. The influences in my life, I must say, are, obviously I have to mention people like my parents who have just, you can imagine the day that I came and said, I want to be a mentalist, I come from a traditional Jewish home, and I don't know if people know this, that in Jewish tradition, a Jewish fetus is not considered a legitimate human being until it graduates from medical school. So, I had to come in and say, I'm going to be a mentalist. And of course, that's not a doctor. So anyways, jokes aside, they've been such a good support, and they really, allowed me to explore this alternative profession that no one has even heard of. But in terms of people who I just learned so much from, locally, I've got people who inspire me, who have great visions. I must say, Mark Sham, I love his vision for changing South Africa. That would be a huge influence. In terms of overseas, I'm hugely influenced by people like Hans Zimmer, who's actually a music composer. A lot of the movie scores, to be able to take an emotion and communicate it through his art is something that hugely inspires me. There are mentalists overseas who really inspire me. Some of them are not big performers. They're amazing thinkers. I would say that in terms of leadership and so on, there's people like John Maxwell, who I was fortunate enough to meet in the States at a cocktail party at his house. I was certified as one of the founding members of his team of coaches and speakers. So, he's always said that leadership is influence. He's been a huge influence in how I learn and how I teach. So yeah, the list goes on and on. But certainly, I would say that these are the kind of people who influence me.
So I just Ari, who's and Ari in London, is that correct?
Oh yeah. So say that again. Are you talking about my brother Ari?
Yes.
Is it Ari Gork? Is he watching? He must be taking time off. Yeah, he's in London.
The power of the internet.
I know. Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask you, perhaps we can end off with this, and we do need to speak to you some more about this topic, because half an hour is by no means enough. But if one of the things that you talk about when you talk about the principle of influence, the authority piece of the puzzle, you talk about thought leadership. Right now, what I wanted to ask you is, do you think that as a result of the tools that we now have at our disposal, here's this discussion we're having on Facebook Live, broadcast to the world at large, you have a mobile device at your disposal. What is your sort of thinking around these principles in the digital world that we now inhabit?
I think the digital world is connecting us to so many people, and it's so easy to connect. Here we are, we've got my brother watching it in London. It's so easy to now connect face to face. And so, for example, a topic that I'm really passionate about, which is body language. Now that we can connect, it's not just about hearing the voice, but we can actually see each other's facial expressions. Often I've had lots of conference calls where they have setups in boardrooms where you can see it's as if you're sitting at the table. You can see people's gestures. You can see if their body language changes as you say certain things. So I think that connectivity like this is really going to amplify things like nonverbal communication. But in terms of the psychology of influence, that can influence how you structure your message. And whether that is in the written form on an email, whether it's on a phone call or face-to-face over the camera like this, it's still just as relevant, no matter what the mode of communication is.
Awesome. So I have just a question for you around where would be the best place for people to follow your unfolding story? Where would be the best place to do that?
I would say that it would be social media. All of my social media links are on my website, which is gilangork.com. That's GILANGORK. I often tell people it's like the city of Milan in Italy, but with a G. So gilangork.com, they're all there. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, I'm on all of that. I love to interact with people, so I'd love for them to connect with me.
Excellent. So listen, this was the fastest 30 minutes I've experienced in a long time, and thank you so much for taking your time to join us, Gilan. And we, for those of you who are around the Suits and Sneakers brand, the chances are very big that when you attend one of these events, you'll be able to bump into Gilan and have a chat to him. Shake his hand, make the physical connection if you haven't done so already. But I want you to just ask you one final thing. Where would be the next place that people could see you live?
Wow, I wish I could do more live stuff that's open to the public. My diary just gets filled up with corporate work. We are in the process of setting up potentially every month having a masterclass where I would have either a half or a full day where people would be able to buy a seat to that, and we would be going through anything to do with influence. Some of them may be about body language, some could be about increasing your influence through conversation, others could be about using the 6 principles in your business. I'd say if you connect with me online, you'll be the first to hear about it, and hopefully in the next month or two even, we would be able to have a masterclass up and running that will be publicly available.
Fantastic. So that's thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for the comments. And as I mentioned, for those of you that are watching the replay, if you have any comments or questions that you want to direct at Gilan, please do so in the comments. He will become aware of those and we'll monitor them. If not, we'll tag him into it. So that's 100%. And Gilan, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate this. And I hope you have an enjoyable afternoon, Wednesday afternoon.
Thank you very much. I'm off to Michalisburg to present a talk tonight, so I've got a nice, easy drive ahead of me. But thanks for your time. I really enjoyed this interview. A really, really fast 30 minutes.
Thanks, and have a safe time. Ciao. Good.
Thanks,
bye.
man. Ciao.